the Bible up here and notes, and yeah, so I'm going with the table this morning. So this morning, I'm going to try my best to read out of here the best I can, working on some new contacts. And the most frustrating thing about contacts is the fact that I wear them so I can see, right? But for the fact is, because they're new, I can't see with them. You have to get used to them, right? So it's like, I'd rather just put my glasses back on. Like, why am I doing this? But I'm going to try my best, and hopefully they don't fall out or something. All right, well, good morning, and welcome back to in-seat service here. This is great. We took our little 2-week hiatus. And I'm happy that we were able to come back and meet, because it's important to meet, right? It's important to be in each other's presence, even if, there's a danger involved or whatever, right? It's still important for us to be together. And I'm really happy for that this morning. The other thing is I want us to realize is that even though our video this morning actually said session 2, I completely recognize and expect that this might actually be session 1 for a lot of people, because technically our fall fellowship started last week while we were all home and everything, but like I said, I completely understand if no one was able to get there in life, and that's fine. So this may be session 1 for you. So I want to invite anyone who has not been connected to a life group in any way or anything like that, or if you're streaming at home, I want you to know that you're not too late, right? This may actually be session 1, and we just don't know it, right? You're not too late to get connected to a life group. Again, if you're streaming from home, we do have a couple life groups that are utilizing Whereby in order to connect people online so they can attend a group and be part of the discussion of Jonah, the book of Jonah. That's what our fall fellowship is about. We all gather under one study and one book and go through it as a church. So like I said, this is session 2, but it might actually be session 1. You might not have missed anything yet, so feel free to get connected in that way. I want to start this morning by simply asking a question. Do we have any daydreamers? Isaac, raise your hand. Daydreamer, oh, come on, everybody daydreams at least a little bit, right? Even if it's just a few minutes or whatever, because daydreaming is a really good way for us to just kind of disconnect, right? We just kind of go into our own little world for a little while, and it's, if you're an introvert, maybe that's the way you recharge, like I just gotta be by myself, I'm just gonna go to myself here and just relax or whatever, right? I can't relate to that too much, but maybe that's your thing, right? Daydreaming has a way of allowing us to explore maybe our adventures that we all wish that we could be on. Maybe, you're the star of your own superhero movie or something, or you want to travel to distant worlds, or maybe you're more low-key, you'd rather rest on a beach and listen to the waves. You close your eyes, right? You just hear the waves coming. Or maybe you're an outdoors kind of person, so you prefer to sit in the woods and listen to the wind blow through the leaves. Right? That was a trap. You were supposed to start daydreaming. Who daydreamed? Who checked out? Yeah, okay. That was a trap. I wanted you to check out, okay? Because the entire point is I want you to realize what daydreaming does, okay? Those that can get so deep into their daydreams, eventually you almost like disconnect, right? You almost become numb to what's around you, right? Maybe you even start to lose that experience of like someone sitting next to you, even though like everyone kind of knows that sense, right? They're not actually physically touching you, but they're there, that kind of idea, right? So that sense kind of goes away. You stop listening. Maybe you stop hearing my voice, which isn't hard, but maybe that's what you do, right? You just kind of tone out, and that's what daydreaming does. It's this idea that we're here, but we're not. You're conscious, but you're also not. And here in the first chapter of Jonah, that's what we're kind of seeing, right? We're seeing Jonah check out, okay? We see him, he's here. The book is named after him, but he's not really here. See, because Jonah is just to kind of recap a little bit, okay? Jonah is one of those weird books in the Old Testament that's not a story through a prophet, like you would like Isaiah or Ezekiel, right? Where they got a word from God and they, told this warning or this prophecy, right? And it got written down, right? It's not a story through a prophet, but it's a story about a prophet. And frankly, not a very good one, right? And not only, even on top of that, Jonah is actually written weird because it's not really serious. right? I don't know if anyone was able to watch the video last week, but Jonah is actually written more like an SNL skit than it is just a regular like docudrama or something like that, okay? Like it even starts out with a joke, right? The word of the Lord came to Jonah. Ha! I know it's not very funny, but if you were back then, right, you'd think that was funny because it was like, yeah, we all know what happened last time. The word came to Jonah. Yeah, sure, right? He's like the biggest slapstick comedy, in his own story kind of thing, right? So it's just a weird book. It's a different kind of book, okay? And so up until this point, which we're going to cover today, we're going to start verses 4 through 6, okay? That's what we're going to cover today. So up until this point, what we've seen Jonah do is get the word of the Lord, right? And then just run the opposite direction, okay? We kind of talked about that last week. The reason being is there's this harsh judgment that is the possibility of coming on the Ninevite people. There's this harsh judgment from God, and Jonah wants to see that happen. So he runs away so that way he doesn't have to give this warning to the Ninevite people, right? He goes to a boat, gets on a boat, and heads for Tarshish, which is literally the opposite direction of where he needs to be going. Getting as far away as he can. And that's where we find ourselves this morning. He's on the boat, and we are going to start on verse 4, and we're going to reread. Like I know Eric Mason already read this for us, but we're going to go ahead and reread it. Starting in verse 4, Jonah, chapter 1, verse 4. But the Lord hurled a great wind upon the sea, and there was a mighty tempest on the sea, so that the ship threatened to break up. I love almost like the personification that the author kind of puts on this, which means it gives human qualities to like objects, okay, this personification. So it's this idea like the ship threatened to break up. I always thought that was kind of an interesting way that the writer is trying to write this story. So threatened to break up. Then the mariners were afraid, and each cried out to his God, and they hurled the cargo that was in the ship into the sea to lighten it for them. But Jonah had gone down into the inner part of the ship and had lain down and was fast asleep. So the captain came and said to him, "What do you mean, you sleeper? Arise, call out to your God. Perhaps the God will give a thought to us that we may not perish." I think it's easy to get into this collection of verses here, and immediately what we hear is God is angry at Jonah. And in our own minds, in the way that we as humans react to things, we would think, well, yeah, he has every right to be, right? He has every right to be mad at Jonah. He's not listening. In fact, he's kind of throwing a temper tantrum. But in all actuality, I want us to look at this a little differently, okay? Not as this idea of God's wrath coming upon Jonah, but instead God's unwillingness to allow Jonah to run. I don't know if you are a parent, and even if you're not, I have this is a parenting tip, okay? Kids throw temper tantrums often. But the thing is, when they throw the temper tantrum, do you just allow them to remain there? Or is your job as a parent to teach them how to handle that emotion? How to handle that anger, how to handle that disappointment, how to handle whatever feeling they're having. No, yeah, your job as a parent is to help them through that, right? So that way on the other side of this, they're better, right? They learn how to handle it better, how to be more honoring in their actions and stuff like that. I mean, that's your job as a parent, right? So why would we think any differently with God in this scenario? In fact, it doesn't even match the overall context of the story of Jonah. Why would God hurl this wrathful storm at his servant, only later, like literally 2 verses later, save him in some miraculous way that you never see again in the Bible? Like, it just doesn't make sense. Like, God would not have the motivation of just like, well, you screwed up this time, gone, and just wipe him from the face of the planet. That's not the motivation there. But instead, it's a pursuit. So when we see this major storm coming upon the ship, threatening to break it up, it's weird that because you want to see God's wrath, but really it's mercy. It's a merciful God that is trying to correct Jonah's actions and not give up on him. That's actually what we see. Now, I don't want to necessarily turn this into we all have storms in our life, because I want us to more focus on the character of God in this. Because, yes, we all have our individual storms that we can go through, and you can label that however you would like. But let's not always assume that the storms in our life is because we have necessarily done something wrong or bad or something like that, but yet it is just something maybe as simple as God's just trying to get your attention. Yes, maybe he's trying to get your attention due to a sin. That's highly possible. But he's also maybe just trying to change your direction in life. And I love the way Eric Mason said it. Don't get angry at God because of the storm. Because it's quite possibly he is the only person that is going to remain with you through it. Right? That's something that we say here all the time, Memorial, right? We talk about this all the time. All authority in heaven and earth have been given to me. Go therefore, make disciples. Why are we allowed, or why do we have the ability to do that? And behold, I am with you always to the end of the age. Through the storm, through the sunshine, through our sin, through our hypocrisy, all of that, he's still there. He doesn't leave. This thing that would normally be used for destruction is actually being used to display God's mercy. Now let's skip over the sailors crying out to their gods for just one moment, actually. And instead, I want to skip down to the point where Jonah has fallen asleep in the ship. Because this is actually, let's call it the low point of the story. Okay, let's call it that. Because before that, and Eric kind of talked on it a little bit, but I want to hit it again. And that's this idea in this narrative of Jonah, especially just these first 6 verses in chapter 1, we see this theme of going down. Okay, we see, he goes down to Joppa, he goes down into the ship, he goes down to literally the depths of the ship, right? And then eventually he goes down and lays down to fall asleep. Now, I don't want to necessarily point out the fact that, he's going down. We get that Jonah's going down. Instead, I want to point out that there are steps involved. As the author was writing this, it wasn't this, Jonah got a word from the Lord and then he fell asleep. No, there's steps in between, right? That the author is clearly trying to get us to recognize. Because let's remember, the book of Jonah is a mirror, okay? When we look at the book of Jonah, what we want to do is try to see ourselves in the narrative, okay? In all aspects. You can say, I'm Jonah in this story, or maybe I'm the sailors in this story, or whatever, right? But in this particular point, we're Jonah, right? Let's think about that. Whenever we are going down, it's usually not at the snap of a finger. Casting Crowns had a song a long time ago called Slow Fade. Does everyone remember that song? Yeah. It's always that slow fade that gets you. One little stumble here, one little stumble there, one poor decision here, until eventually you look up and you're down in this hole and you're just like, how did I get here? Because it's a slow fade. And I like that the author put it in here that there's steps to this. He just keeps going and going and going until eventually, like I said, we reach this low point where Jonah has fallen asleep. And not just physically, right? It's a state of spiritual slumber, almost like spiritual apathy, because at this point, he doesn't care about anything that's going on around him. Just like a daydreamer, right? When we were talking about before, all of this stuff is happening around him, but he's numb to it because the only thing he's worried about is getting away from God. Until the point that his spirit is so empty that his witness is gone. Now let's go back up. His witness is gone, and he's surrounded by sailors who need that witness. Like how the sailors cry out to their individual gods. Because, see, at this point, the sailors are probably living in a lot more of like a polytheist society where they believe in many gods, right? Okay? And the downside, well, there's several downsides, but one major downside of that type of belief system is whenever bad things happen, you don't know who you made mad. You have no idea, right? It could be some, kind of like the Greeks, right? To the unknown God, as one of the statues is in Athens, right? The unknown God, because you never know. There could be some God that I have offended that I haven't even met or heard of. So I need to just pray and sacrifice and do all of these things, and hopefully I'll hit one of them to make this storm go away. See, these were probably seasoned sailors, and this storm come upon them, and immediately they start praying to gods. So there was something in them that obviously made them say, there's something not right about this storm. There's something supernatural happening here. We've obviously offended some God. So without some guide to direct their anxieties and their fears and whatever feelings they're having right now, all of that, their fear. I mean, I can't say any other way to say that, right? Their fear is not being directed properly. So they reach out to whatever they know. And that's any possible God that they know of. And that's how it's written in this story. But nowadays, obviously, we all worship our own gods, little g, okay, that take the place of serving the Lord Jesus Christ, okay? So in the same way, what if we were found in a place where we were just spiritually apathetic, going down and down and down, where our witness is gone, and you are surrounded by all of these people that are idolizing things and trying to seek satisfaction in things that they shouldn't be. And the one person that maybe should be providing that witness is being apathetic. Because they're choosing to run the opposite direction. See, this is the mirror that we see in Jonah. This is how we should be seeing ourselves, giving ourselves that self-check. It's like, am I Jonah in this? Am I being apathetic? Are there people around me that are falling through the cracks that I should be witnessing to, but instead I'm choosing to not? And allowing them to seek their own gods into whatever means they want. And sometimes it's not even necessarily a worshiping of a god per se, but they're just simply trying to take care of things on their own. Because when people take care of things on their own, sometimes it resembles a godly nature, but you can just tell it's a little off. And you kind of see that in the sailors too. I kind of was thinking about this literally while I was sitting right over there. You notice it said in verse 4, but the Lord hurled a great wind, right? So God's trying to take care of the situation by correcting it, right? Even if it takes a huge storm. What do the sailors do? They're trying to correct the situation too by hurling their cargo. Right? They're trying to fix it in their own way, and it may seem about right, it may seem like something godly and stuff, but it's just a little off. Self-check. How is our sin, our own disobedience, causing us to be apathetic to those around us? Because our own bad decisions don't just affect us. As a body, our bad decision does not just affect us, but those around us as well, equally, if not more so. That's our responsibility as believers. I love the way Paul puts it in 1 Thessalonians 5, verses 5 through 6. For you are all children of light, children of the day. We are not of the night or of the darkness. So then let us not sleep as others do, but let us keep awake and sober. Paul's warning is pretty clear here. It's basically just be vigilant. Don't let that downward spiral start. Be vigilant. Because we're meant to be light. We're meant to be guides. We're meant to help those that are lost in anxieties and fears and direct them to God. That's our purpose. That's why we're here. And if the truth of the matter is, yeah, just like Jonah on the boat, when we would see, well, yeah, that's obviously God's wrath after him. And God would have every right to do so. To say, Jonah, you messed up. I'm just going to crash this ship with you on it, and I'll pick somebody else. And we would see that as just, right? Oh yeah, he disobeyed. It's totally justified for God to behave in that way. But obviously God doesn't. Why not? Well, that's not his nature. See, God doesn't just be just. He isn't just merciful. He's both. And actually, he shows his just through his mercy, which is the reason why we're here to begin with, right? We are invited and allowed to be a part of the redemptive story of the world because God chooses so through his mercy. See, the just action, which would be his wrath due to our sin, was taken care of. So we don't have to bear that weight. We don't have to bear that sin. Jesus did that for us on the cross. That's actually the accumulation of this idea that his mercy is, justice is shown through his mercy was accumulated on the cross. Jesus bore all of that sin, so we didn't have to. God could have very easily looked at us and been like, well, you humans are just going to mess it up anyways. I'm just going to wipe it all the way clean, throw it all away, and start over. But that's not what he chooses to do. He chooses to involve us in that story by redeeming us through Christ. And it just takes a faithful step out on our part to become part of that family and a part of that story. Where do you find yourself this morning? Do you find yourself in a state of spiritual apathy where maybe you don't care anymore? Well, just like Jonah, maybe God's trying to hurl a storm at you to change your direction. Because even in that sin and that apathy, God can be there. One last verse and we're going to close. Hebrews 10:24, and this is actually one of my favorites. And let us consider how to stir up one another to love and good works. This is what I would consider the opposite of spiritual apathy. Because the word consider in this verse is an active term. It's not passively done, right? I don't consider what's for dinner and then just expect it to show up on the table. Even though it happens sometimes because Sarah's awesome. But it's an active thought, right? You have to plan it out. You have to think about, okay, I got to put the roast in at this time, right? It's an active process that you have to think through in order to have dinner, to have food, right? That's what consider is. Consider is actively pursuing an idea. Okay, if you wanted to simply define that. Considering is actively pursuing an idea. So how do we actively, as a church, pursue the idea of not allowing spiritual apathy in this body? Not allowing people to fall through the cracks and isolate themselves because of fear or because of whatever, right? But instead, reach out to them and show them love and compassion like we were meant to.